You know, I was so tempted to start this video with my dreadful impression of an Australian accent, but then I realised that only 2 of the tournaments contested last week actually took place down under, so... Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog for the first time in 2018. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done already. The 2018 season is up and running. We're 7 events down, if you separate the men's and women's tournaments that take place in the same place, if that makes any sense. I love the beginning of a new tennis season pretty much more than any other part of it. You get an idea of who's going to be one to watch, who might be in for a bit of trouble, and then the Australian Open comes super quickly. And for me, the Australian Open is the most intriguing slam because it's so close to the beginning of the season that you still don't have much of an idea of how players are going to fare, so it's really about who can take off quickly enough. So there were 3 ATP champions and 3 WTA champions last week, plus Roger Federer and Belinda Bencic, who won the Hopman Cup exhibition event for Switzerland. That's really positive for Bencic, who was in the top 10 a couple of years ago but then got injured and after that just couldn't really figure out how to win again. And obviously Federer is carrying on his winning ways pretty well after a rather disappointing exit in the semi-finals of the ATP finals in November last year. Last season the Hopman Cup was a major help to Federer, no pun intended. He hadn't competed in 6 months, he was pretty rusty, and it was essential to get in that guaranteed match play, really ease back into things in a situation where there's no pressure. He's bound to be hoping it helps him again because with Rafael Nadal joining the long list of ATP players struggling with injury, there is really tons more pressure on his shoulders than there was this time last season. Speaking of players who have been sidelined, Novak Djokovic and Stan Wawrinka will be making their first appearances in some time at the Australian Open. However, Murray has recently undergone hip surgery and therefore will be out until at least the grass court season. To be honest, we could do a whole 15-minute video on ATP players who have been injured or who are currently injured, so we'd probably better just leave it there. As far as official champions go, the following 6 players came out on top in week 1 of the new season. Nick Kyrgios made the best ever start to a season in his career by beating Ryan Harrison in the final to claim the Brisbane International Trophy. And the title itself was evidence that he was fully invested and totally dialed in. When he's fully focused like that, his raw power and his shot-making ability are really tough to stop for any player. There is no question that he's virtually unstoppable on his day, as we saw in Brisbane, where he also beat Grigor Dimitrov, giving Dimitrov his first defeat since he won the ATP finals. Dimitrov was talking about how it just seemed effortless really from Kyrgios' side of the court, nailing his mark. So when he's on his day, he's unstoppable, but when he's not, Kyrgios can really find it hard to find the motivation to slug it out when necessary. And so going forward into the season, it's all about how much he really wants it and how long he's going to stay focused for. He's never won big like this at the beginning of a season before, so this might provide the fire under his feet that he needs to kind of get going and continue the form that he's shown he's so capable of. Moving on to the women's champion in Brisbane. In the women's event, Elina Svitolina topped qualifier and world number 88 Alexandra Sasnovich for the first title of her 2018 season. She beat 2 top 10 players on the way to the trophy alongside a former top 10 player and a former junior world number 1, so that's a pretty strong draw for an international event. Svitolina was statistically the best WTA player for the first 6 months of 2017, and she ended the season with more titles than any other player. Yet she always seems to be overlooked a little, and I think that's probably because she doesn't have a game that particularly stands out. There are no notable weapons. There's nothing really unique or noteworthy in her game, I guess, that really shouts itself out above anything else, but she is a really solid all-round player, which is why she's getting these results, and she's got great fight and determination. Given that these days the eventual champions at a women's event in a Grand Slam are not generally the favourites entering the event, Svitolina should definitely not be overlooked when considering contenders for the Australian Open title. Basically, Svitolina has been making a pretty steady ascent, and what is left for her to do is break through at a major, really, and this could be her time. Another contender in Melbourne is world number 1, Simona Halep, still searching for that maiden Grand Slam title. She didn't really end 2017 strongly despite her top ranking. At the Shenzhen Open last week, she didn't really beat anyone of particular status. None of her opponents were ranked inside the top 40, but it did show that she can beat the players that she's supposed to be beating on a regular basis, even when she's playing the first matches of her season and she hasn't properly warmed up yet. She lost a couple of sets in straightforward fashion, which indicates that she's not quite in world-beating form yet. But to be fair, her final victim, Katerina Siniakova, is a pretty promising player. She's been building up steadily over the past couple of years and is one to keep an eye on. She beat Maria Sharapova in the semi-finals, which these days requires mental strength as much as anything, and for me, mental strength is at least 50% of the entire game. One of the more unexpected champions in the first week of the season was Gael Monfils, and that's not because he's not extremely talented, because he is, and we know that he is, but because you can never tell when he's going to be able to string together a run of great performances. And quite frankly, I don't think he knows either. He won the Qatar Open without beating anyone ranked higher than world number 39. However, world number 5 Dominic Thiem withdrew from the events before they could actually face off. Monfils hadn't played since the US Open due to injury. He hadn't won a title since 2016, and throughout his career, he has never won more than 1 title in a single season. So, you can't predict Monfils. He plays such an unpredictable game. He comes out with his trick shots, his brilliant ground stroke winners from nowhere, but that's not exactly a promising statistic. Still, he's never won a title this early in a season either throughout his career, so there's a first time for everything. Germany's Julia Gerges upset Caroline Wozniacki to win the ASB Classic. In doing so, she delivered Wozniacki her first loss since a surprise WTA Finals win in October. There were times when Wozniacki looked like she was going to win the event pretty easily, but Gerges winning in that final, even in straight sets, wasn't a massive shock. After floundering around outside the top 20 for some time, she really rediscovered herself last season. She ended the year by winning the WTA Elite Trophy, which is for the next level of players that didn't quite make it to the WTA finals. She's barely outside the top 10 now at world number 12 and is definitely someone who can climb higher, pretty much under the radar in the weeks to come. And last but not least, Gilles Simon came out on top in India, the first time this particular tournament has been held outside of Chennai. Simon has a career high ranking of world number 6, but he entered the event last week ranked world number 89 thanks to a nightmare 2017 season in which he failed to reach a single ATP semi-final. So for him to immediately come out in the new season and win 5 straight matches is really encouraging, especially when his final 2 victims were Marin Cilic, and you can just never tell when Cilic is going to bring out his best tennis, and when he does, it's very flat, very hard to deal with, very hard to keep up with. And Kevin Anderson, who of course made his maiden Grand Slam final at the US Open last season and is really in the form of his life. As far as the WTA goes, Svitolina probably impressed me most of the champions last week, plainly because of the caliber of her opposition and because of the way she carried herself throughout the week and just went businesslike through the tournament. It's not often on the women's tour at the moment that a player can do really well in the previous season and then come out the next year and carry on straight from where they left off, so that's really positive for her. But for the ATP, I was definitely most surprised by Simon's victory. Kyrgios and Monfils may not have been your first prediction for champion at their respective events, but the similarity between those two is they have the trick shots, the power and the precision that they can pull out at any given moment. Simon, meanwhile, had been in really pretty abysmal form given his standards from previous years. And he's also been a champion of the defensive players on tour for many years. Nothing about his game is built around power, it's all about timing, precision, placement. And when a player like that is dropping off a bit, especially after all the years Simon's been on tour, you can easily start thinking that they're kind of coming to the end. But all it takes is a week for things to turn around, and he's now risen over 30 spots in the ranking and is going to be a pretty dangerous floater in Melbourne where he has caused trouble before. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I've been talking about, leave them down below. I have a poll going on my Twitter, which is for an upcoming video, so please check that out and vote if you haven't voted already. In fact, there are 2 of them, and they're in a thread, so yeah. Go from there. Predictions for the Australian Open. Get them in. Who do you think's gonna win? Thank you guys, and I'll see you at the next video.